and welcome back to the Plant-Based Asia Summit. I'm Angie and I'm very excited to introduce you to our next speaker. Damien Mander is the founder and CEO of the International Anti-Poaching Foundation, or IAPF, which was established to be the last line of defense for nature. Over the last decade, the IAPF has scaled to train and support rangers, which now help protect over 20 million acres of African wilderness. In 2017, Damien founded Akashinga, Nature Protected by Women, an IAPF program that has grown to over 240 employees with 7 nature reserves in their portfolio. And they're the only group of nature reserves in the world to be protected by women. Now, Damien was featured in the Game Changers documentary and has also released another documentary with James Cameron and National Geographic about his work with the women of Akashinga, the brave ones. Damien, welcome. It's such an honor to have you join us today.
Good afternoon, Ange, and g'day to everyone that's watching. Thanks very much for tuning in, and thank you for having me on today. It's awesome to be here.
Thank you, Damien. I'd like to start with your background. So can we please talk about how you first got into conservation work? What led you to your work in Africa and to the creation of IAPF?
So I was in the Aussie military. So I spent some time with the Navy and then transferred across to the Army. Worked with the Special Operations Unit there. Eventually ended up in Iraq, spending 3 years over in Iraq, and then beginning of 2008 was when I finished up military career and trying to figure out what next. And I landed in South America. It was supposed to be just a bit of a, just a holiday, a sort of self-reward after surviving Iraq and serving in some pretty cool military units. And what started off as a bit of a party / holiday turned into a pretty rapid downward spiral of drugs and alcohol. Almost a year in South America, having just left this brotherhood of these units that I worked with, and for whatever reason it may be, which obviously shifts with the hindsight that you get after leaving a place like Iraq. But regardless, we still had purpose and we had mission. And then all of a sudden, the network around you is gone, and the purpose, the most elusive thing in life, is no longer there. So I got sit here today and pay homage to a lot of friends that are no longer with us. That sometimes for a lot of us the real war starts when the bullets stop and you're trying to figure out how to reintegrate back into society. And the lucky thing for me is when I hit rock bottom, I bounced and had heard about anti-poaching as some sort of, sounded like a romantic adventure in Africa. As a kid that grew up reading a bunch of Wilbur Smith and Bryce Courtney books, and just essentially got myself together and got myself over to Africa, and just started going out and seeing what was going on with conservation and where I could eventually fit in. I got a few roles here and there. I was for the wrong reasons. I was looking for adventure or a fight rather than a cause. And eventually you start to gain an understanding of the dedication that wildlife rangers commit and the people that work with them and support them. I just come from being in Iraq as part of a militarized this $600 billion a year military war machine, and we were looking after resources in the ground on behalf of the arguments of old men. And then you see rangers, and we had anything we wanted, like whether it's a drone trying to get us home safely at the end of the day, or a new bit of kit or whatever. And then I come to Africa and I see this struggle for nature and animals going on, and these people that were dedicated to it, and they just didn't have hardly any resources. And it's just like the imbalance for me was it was something that struck me. But I would say if I'd seen it a decade before, it probably would have meant nothing. But we're all a product of our past, and we evolve over time. And Iraq, age and some experience had given me a different lens through which to see the world. And And by that stage, I think I was ready for something different, something of a much higher meaning, at least personally. And a lot of that comes with self-evaluation and that internal struggle that we all go through at various times in our life. And but it was in a world where it's very hard to be genuinely inspired. Rangers inspired me to want to do something different. With the only two things that I had at that stage in life, I managed to do reasonably well through residential property investment. So I had money, and I had a unique set of skills that were unfortunately required to go out and train rangers to protect animals like elephant and rhinoceros.
Wow, that's what a story, Damien. I love that you said that you found your higher, it was a higher meaning, right? It was your calling basically, but just at the right time in your life.
Yeah, it's not like I sat down and people often ask how to get involved, or how can I do something that's constructive. And it wasn't like I sat down and crafted this whole roadmap of like, this is what my life is going to look like for the next 10, 20 years. I sit here now, I'm 41, and this is the rest of my life that I'm going to be doing this. And it's not like I sat down on day one and said, all right, this is now me, and this is where it's going to go. I just started by doing something, and that leads to something else. And you gain momentum as you go, you learn, you make mistakes. And it's definitely been the case with my conservation career, but not only the conservation career, I would say own personal evolution, and to where we are as an organization today. It's like I'm in a really good space. We're 12 years old. We have made a lot, many of the mistakes that are out there to be made, and just use those as lessons. And here we are today. Collectively, we have a staff that's heading towards 300 people, operating across a bunch of countries in Southern and in East Africa, doing an amazing job protecting massive, wide landscapes of wilderness that are home to millions of, if not billions of different creatures, all different shapes and sizes. And of course, the important forests and bushlands and grasslands that they live in.
Yeah, extremely important work what you're doing. So let's actually get into poaching itself. Why is poaching still such a problem? What is driving this industry?
Yeah, so the illegal taking of wildlife, the illegal wildlife trade is one of the largest criminal industries in the world. It's behind guns, drugs, human trafficking, and counterfeiting. And it's essentially, there's two components to poaching. One is subsistence. So subsistence is someone is trying to feed their family. And I'll get into later how our work has evolved to be dealing more with taking a social impact, investment, and development approach to achieve a conservation outcome. But the other side of it is commercial poaching, and that is the killing of, for example, elephant and rhinoceros for the tusk or the horn. And this is essentially another currency for organized crime networks. So it's very dangerous, the work that we do, especially when we start dealing with some of the higher levels of people involved with these organized crime syndicates that are also involved with the other networks that I spoke about earlier. And often you do see a lot of crossover in the people that we're dealing with, and the people that work in these roles, going after these networks, in danger every day. It's part of the job, but it's on the ground at ranger level, we see armed units crossing international borders. They're often armed with heavy caliber rifles for taking down the animal. We're seeing, and they'll have automatic weapons as well, and willing to kill elephants like rhino. Willing to kill animals like elephant and rhino, or anyone standing in their way. You've got let's say a rhino which might have 15 kilograms of rhino horn on its snout, and a horn can sell for as much as $75,000 a kilogram. So you've got something that should technically be locked in a safe running around an area the size of a small country. So it is very challenging, and there's multiple layers to it, and it's a battle that's been fought on many fronts, on the ground, the law enforcement side, in the communities, the social development side. We've got policy and laws at national level. You've got transnational crime. You've got demand reduction that's been fought on the other side of the world. So it is, and you can't sit here and say any one of those components is more important than the other. It's when they're all working together that we start to see downturns in poaching.
So where are you noticing that, for instance, rhino horn, what parts of the world are buying this the most?
Yeah, rhino horn, it goes, from what we've read and seen, and I've spent a lot of time traveling to the end user market and trying to understand that as well. But Vietnam is definitely and has been a hot spot. Vietnam, continuously rising economic superpower in Southeast Asia. Don't tend to travel as much, stay at home, spending a rising disposable income on consumer-related goods, and one of those is for over a decade now has increasingly been rhino horn, where it has been used in traditional medicine as far back as 3,000 years. That tends to not be the bulk of what we are understanding rhino horns used to be these days. It is being used as a commodity. It's like owning a Rolex or having a Ferrari sitting in your driveway. It's a demonstration of wealth that is increasingly used amongst the business elite to close business deals or gift, or even stockpiling within the black market itself, in the hope that as rhino numbers continue to go down, the price of that product will increase. So there's organizations that are really working on the demand side in Asia, working at policy and law enforcement level over there. And our job here in Africa is to work on the ground and develop systems with local indigenous communities that try and reduce the need for people to poach and the ability for people to come in and exploit these natural resources.
So your work on the ground there, you're not actually only out there in the field with the rangers protecting wildlife, you're also working on the social side of it. Can you just maybe share a little bit more about that part?
So when we started off as an organization in 2009, we were a service provider. So we were going out and training other rangers, whether it be for governments or for private organizations or other NGOs. Eventually, we continued to grow as an organization, taking on bigger jobs that would manage the security of landscapes. So not just one park, but multiple parks that were grouped together in critical areas, some of the most hard hit and I'd say dangerous areas on the continent for rangers. And in particular, one project along the border of Kruger National Park, which is at the time was home to around a third of the world's remaining rhinoceros population. So it was the epicenter of rhino poaching on the planet. In 2017, we really had a deep, that we are personally 8 years into what we were doing, and we were having these increasingly like militarized operations to protect nature. There was this like line in the sand between nature and communities, and we had helicopters, canine attack teams, we had multiple government departments, military grade hardware, and it just, people kept saying you've got to get the community side right, but when you've got, at that stage, through that region, we had 11 armed units at any one time coming through there. It's very easy to say, oh, you got to go and get the community side right, but when you're faced with armed conflict on a daily basis and the potential for your rangers being shot, it's very hard to be able to sort of take that step back and try and evaluate other options. We started looking into what other organizations were doing, what was successful, what wasn't successful, where people were giving, in particular with women, giving certain opportunities, but not full opportunities. And we looked at conservation as a whole versus other industries that were getting ahead by getting more women on the boards, more women as CEOs, and more women in management. and conservation is largely, at least at a field-based level, women outnumbered at a ratio of 100 to 1 in those frontline roles. So they're not gaining the experience that they need to be able to grow into senior management positions with, and, when you've got to make a decision and people's lives depend on that decision, you need experience. We found an area in Zimbabwe. It was actually an abandoned trophy hunting area. Now, what's important about this area is it falls under communal or tribal land trusts. So unlike a national park system, which is a federal system and the federal government manages, tribal or communal land trust areas are owned by local indigenous communities. And there's more than twice as much land on the African continent set aside for wilderness that's held under tribal land trust than what there is for national parks. So these are critical pieces of wilderness. Many of that have used trophy hunting as an economic model to try and generate income and motivation from the local communities. So trophy hunting as an industry is dying, and we found this area in Zimbabwe where we were able to sit down with the local community and try to explain this concept that we had that would be an all-female anti-poaching unit. Look, it took a lot of negotiations because we were working in a very patriarchal society and a very male-dominated industry. We were given 3 days to go out and do selection and try and put this program together. 3 days is a very short period to be able to do that, and it was expected by pretty much everyone that the program would fail and we would prove that this is a man's job. What happened is the women blew it out of the water. They were just absolutely amazing, very tough, extremely resilient. These were women that were survivors of serious sexual assault, domestic violence, AIDS orphans, single mothers, abandoned wives, in a country that when I first arrived in 2009 had the lowest life expectancy in the world for a woman. So when we put out that selection criteria, what we didn't realize is we're actually getting the toughest in society. This then led us on from being a service provider as an organization, so going out and providing training. It's like, okay, we have an opportunity here to take up the lease on this land, a 45-year lease with the community to manage and protect this area. That was just over 4 years ago. We started with 16 women protecting one area of 90,000 acres. We now have 240 staff as part of this program. There's actually 8 reserves that are under management, a portfolio of 1.3 million acres. And we are currently finalizing negotiations on an additional more than 6 million acres of wilderness in two new countries. I won't go into too many details just yet because ink is still sort of drying on paper and working out the final pieces. But it's been a model that has, I think, not only changed the way we've perceived conservation, but a model that a lot of other people are adopting. And I can sit here now with 2 decades of experience in law enforcement, military operations around the world, and in conservation. And I can say that putting women at the forefront of law enforcement will change the dynamics of society for the better. And it's not like you can go into Chicago and say, oh, we're going to get rid of, swap out all the men for the women in law enforcement and see what happens. But with conservation, we had a blank canvas. We had this opportunity to do it because we were working in an area where conservation efforts had vanished. And so that was a unique opportunity for us to be able to trial this program, and we haven't looked back. We're in a fantastic position now in terms of growth, both financially, operationally, geographically. And it's a model that we're not trying to sell. Other governments are coming to us, other local communities are coming to us, the chiefs are coming to us, and they're saying, we want you to come in and partner with us for the long term to help build up these areas.
That's amazing, just fantastic. And the work that these women do, I mean, maybe you could tell us a little bit about their role. What is the specific role a ranger has? How dangerous it is, like you mentioned earlier. Yeah. And what specific training they have to go through?
Yeah, so I mean, the training is there is a large component of law enforcement that's involved there. Obviously, conservation a very strong conservation theme running right through the program. Also dealing with, I mean, the biggest threat that the rangers face is not necessarily the armed poachers they're trying to stop, it's the very animals they're trying to protect. You've got lion, rhinoceros, elephant, leopard, buffalo that are out there, and these can be extremely dangerous animals. And so I suppose that's the irony of it. We spent 6 months training the women, so they're extremely equipped by the time they go out. But there's something that's very different for us, at least, that has made this program the success that it has become. And I think a lot of that is aligned to the value systems of a woman, particularly in terms of conflict management. Women, for us, seem to de-escalate tension in situations that could very easily escalate. Now, as women de-escalate potential conflict situations, what that meant for us as an organization is we were able to de-escalate. So de-escalation in law enforcement meant demilitarization. So we don't have helicopters and all these airplanes and drones and military grade hardware and canine attack teams saturating our areas. We have something far more important than this sort of biceps and bullets mindset. We have interpersonal relationships that are being driven by the women in the communities that they were raised in, the communities that they're raising their own families in. Now, what that did for us from an economic standpoint is it cut our core operating costs by 2/3. So because we're investing mostly into local employment for our law enforcement tasks. There's obviously still some basic equipment that's going to be needed, but the other 2/3 of the money that we've saved, we've now been able to invest back into social development programs. So doing water sanitation, helping to stock and equip and repair local clinics to give access to healthcare in some extremely remote and rural areas where often the difference between life and death can be something as simple as $5 malarial drugs or antibiotics. Working with education, not only with school scholarship programs for underprivileged children, but with the women themselves, where we don't, when a candidate comes to us on day one, the first question we ask her is we're not there to give you a uniform, a weapon, some training and go out and protect this area. The first question we ask, what are your dreams? What do you want to do? And then we help build them a career path where this is being a ranger as a stepping stone for them to go on and study to rebuild their lives. We've had women that have gone on to university. We've got lots of women that have gone back and finished their high school diplomas, women that are doing other studies, women that have traveled all over the world giving keynote speeches. We've just had a woman give a lecture to Harvard Law School. This is a woman that several years ago couldn't even finish doing high school because she couldn't afford it. She now owns a block of land next to the high school she once couldn't afford to attend, and has built her own house on it and giving a lecture at Harvard Law School. So there's this whole social development side that we're working on, and that the law enforcement side, so the daily patrols of the women going out and protecting animals and collecting data and measuring what's happening in areas the size of small countries. That is also a piece of the strategy.
It's incredibly inspirational, and you're just empowering these women. And the fact that you ask them first and foremost what their dreams are, it's beautiful. Do you find that some of these women actually just want to stay rangers once they are rangers?
Yes, I mean, some of them have been trained to be instructors. Some of them have risen to their rank of sergeant major. Our new chief scientist, More Angels, she's got a PhD from Oxford University. She's working on the scientific side of the data collection side, the human wildlife conflict side of what we're doing. So there's women. I mean, my dream is that we are building a movement in rural Africa that will create opportunities. And that's all that we've done, is create an opportunity. The women are the ones doing all the work. Build an opportunity that these women will go on and penetrate all different sectors of society, from healthcare to education to senior conservation levels in government departments, even politics. Who knows? But they've done it from the ground up, coming from no place of having any form of favoritism or anything, but they've built that opportunity themselves. So that's you mean, look, we're working in some of the poorest countries on the planet, and just to see the evolution of these women and the staff in the program is, so it's something I'm proud of, and grateful to be a part of a team that is that whole social side is one thing, but then you look at the achievements of what they're doing in terms of protecting the natural world. And I say this at a time when we're slowly starting to understand what life used to be before COVID, and civilization has been brought to its knees for almost 2 years as a direct result of the way we treat nature. And so it's hard to think of a more important job than protecting the natural world. I mean, it is the fight of our times, of humankind ever. And from that standpoint, there's never been a more exciting time to be involved with conservation, I don't think. We have the biggest struggle ever in front of us. We are racing into the 6th mass great extinction, which for the first time in history is a human-created phenomenon. So it's great to be involved with. It's hugely motivating. It's a passion, a purpose, and I think that radiates throughout all our staff levels. The people that are not only the people that are out there patrolling, but the huge support mechanism that is behind the tip of the spear, allowing them to go out and do that work.
Yeah, that's amazing. Really, really fantastic work. But Damien, I'd like to touch on a bit of your personal story. Your journey as a vegan. You're vegan, right? Or plant-based?
Yeah.
Which one do you relate to?
Either or, whichever one you want. Yeah.
Well, can you share your journey with us? So how did you actually become plant-based? Were you already vegan when you first started getting into conservation, or did this happen?
No, definitely not. I was the guy that would order a steak and it would be run it through a warm room and slap it on the plate and put a couple of potatoes next to it. I was a huge meat eater, and it wasn't. I didn't even like my steak cooked like that. I did it as it was like some sort of macho demonstration. Like, look at, here I am, this alpha male eating this almost raw piece of meat, and like literally that's the and even to take it back to my late teenage years, early 20s, when I used to go out hunting, and that was for no other reason than I was desperate for some form of primal respect from my peers. So took aim at the vulnerable. So I can sit here today and I can have this conversation with anyone, because I come from, I would say, the most extreme end of the spectrum in regards to respect for animals, and got involved with conservation initially because I just wanted to, the law enforcement side and the excitement of poaching. And then you're spending your whole life out there with teams of people that are doing the same thing, protecting animals. And you really, talk about that lens through which to see the world. It really does. Things do change. You start to, here's me, I'm traveling around the world, I'm getting up on stage and I'm giving talks and I'm telling people, hey, we've got to protect these animals. And, I'm going out and doing my patrols, and rangers are risking their life to protect animals. And then we're all coming home and we're putting another group of animals on the stove or in the oven on the fireplace. And it just, the hypocrisy for me personally, individually, was, I suppose, you can bullshit other people, you can't bullshit yourself. And for me, that was it was eating away at me. To the point where I was like, I can't, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. I was doing more and more research on the meat industry. I'm a conservationist. I signed up to protect nature and animals, and here I was supporting an industry that's the greatest negative environmental impact on this planet, responsible for the death of over 100 billion animals a year. Could I really say I was a conservationist, or could I say I was just a 9-to-5 conservationist because I wasn't taking my work home to the dinner table? And so, and a master of creating excuses, well, I'm protecting these animals. I've sort of, got some credits to go and eat these animals over here, and cows and chickens aren't going extinct. They don't matter. And then the thing that there are two things that ultimately changed my and I'll say, going vegan or plant-based is the most defining thing that I've ever done in my life. But the two things that really sit with me was the acknowledgement that a cow has no difference in capacity to suffer than a rhinoceros. We both have that capacity to suffer. Both of those animals have a desire to build family structures, to have a life that's free of suffering and pain, and to live. Just the most natural instinct is to live, and we as a species, we continually take that away from animals. So that understanding. The second one is, here I am. I've served in these elite military units. Whatever people want to say, I'm an alpha male. An alpha's male. An alpha should be there in a role to lead and to protect, and to fight for what's right, to stand up for the vulnerable. And here I was as an alpha, I was paying someone else to do something to an animal that I didn't want to do myself. And that for me just, I couldn't really go forward and be genuine in my work, or even as a person, to my own conscience, with the life I was leading in regards to my diet. So it was an overnight decision.
Thank you for sharing that personal journey of yours, Damien. Very inspirational. And did you actually experience? You said you did it overnight in the end.
I went vegetarian overnight, and then after a little bit more reading, then went vegan overnight. So it was basically a 2-step process. But that was I think it started 9 years ago. So and look, I sometimes think our industry can be our own worst enemy. There's in the past 9 years, have I slipped up? Have I had a 3 a.m. drunken affair with a cheesy omelet? Yes. It's like everything in life. We make stuff ups. It's not about being perfect. It's about saying, okay, this is the life I want to lead, and these are my value systems. We have slip ups, and it's like we have this sort of cancel culture within the animal rights and vegan movement, which I think we do more damage than good, because it frightens people off from this sort of, like, this space where there's no flexibility or room to make any mistakes whatsoever. And so, it's, I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes, and I'll probably make them again in the future, but it's definitely, just acknowledging our diets and where our food comes from, and not wanting to be a part of that system, I think is one of the most powerful decisions we can make in terms of benefits towards environment and animals.
Yeah, well said. So it's definitely not about being perfect. It's about trying your best to do, or even if you can just reduce the amount of meat and dairy that you consume, you will make a difference. But I like that you compared a cow to a rhino, because we are conditioned, aren't we? Since childhood, we've been conditioned to think that one is superior to another, or one's life is worth so much less than another. Um,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you hit the nail on the head.
yeah, it's called speciesism, and it's very much like racism or sexism. It's an allocation of different rights and values to uh, different people, different animals, based on their convenience towards us, or how we perceive them, not on the actual the true value of their capacity to suffer, or their rights as an animal, or as a human. And it's how we compartmentalize things. It's like a flexible morality that we're able to allocate to keep things nice and convenient for us as individuals.
Yeah. So Damien, we have time for one last question. So
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, what do you believe is the one thing that a person can do to take control of their life, but also make the best, biggest impact on the world?
Yeah, I mean that's an easy one. Self-evaluation. Look at our diets and how we can. I mean, the food industry itself is just seems to be so broken, from the soil through to the trees, through to the crops, through to the animals, through to the deforestation. Just really evaluate where our food comes from, and the harm that has been done along the way. We, not only as my own change in my diet, but throughout our organization. All of Akashinga is fueled by a plant-based diet. So we have 240 staff doing one of the hardest, toughest jobs on the planet, and one of the most remote and often hostile locations, and they're thriving. I mean, the women have made over 300 arrests, helping driving an 80% downturn in elephant poaching across the mid to lower Zambezi Valley, while we're seeing wildlife population increase by almost 400%. And they're doing all of this on a plant-based diet, patrolling up to 30 kilometers a day, spending up to 5 days patrolling through the bush. And it's all on a plant-based diet. And so it's impossible for people in other countries or other places to go and say, oh, it's too hard to try and adopt this, or to be having a more plant-based focus, because these women are proving that it's possible. So yeah, I think the first step is just that self-evaluation, and just and for those people that have already made the leap, keep having conversations, keep getting better at them, because when we're talking to other people, it often feels like we can be talking to a brick wall. But the truth is accumulative. And like for me, it took a number of years to be able to acknowledge that truth. But some people it'll take 10 minutes, some people it'll take 10 years, but just keep having your conversations, because it's not deaf ears that you're speaking to. That stuff adds up. And when the shutters come up, they never go down again.
What a beautiful way to end it, Damien. I really, really appreciate your time, your inspirational and heartwarming discussion today. And hopefully you've inspired people to, as you said, self-evaluate and continue the discussion. Excellent advice, and all the best to you going forward. All the best to IAPF, and yeah, do keep in touch, and hopefully we'll just be hearing more and more good news from you, and as you expand as well into other regions.
Yeah, awesome, Angie. Thanks for having us on here this afternoon. It's been great, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the conference. And yeah, thank you.